We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It is Thursday. We are recording this Tuesday night, though. So, if anything changes between Tuesday night and the time you hear this, we will have some additional stuff for the podcast as well. I want to thank Kristen, who joined us yesterday. We talked extensively about what's going on in LA because she happens to live in LA. Thank you to her for stopping by today. We have another old favorite. His name is Eric. And Eric and Kristen is, they're you guys are both great guests, but you're totally different. Kristen was getting a little flustered when we were on the show because she was getting pretty fired up, and she doesn't usually get fired up, and she felt bad. Oh, I didn't mean to get unhinged there. I go, no, keep that shit up. Because I know Eric's coming up, and between the two of us, neither one of them will get unhinged. So good to have a little excitement now and again.
Oh yeah, I try to keep a general calm around everything because it doesn't do a lot of good to get overworked up. Then you start thinking, you're not thinking clearly, and you make mistakes in how you analyze things, or you make mistakes in how you do things, and that's the last thing we need right now. We need to be thinking clearly, focused on where the problems are, and what we need to do to fix them going forward.
Well, it's interesting you say that because when you panic, you fuck up. And it just so happens our president seems to be panicking and fucking up continually. I mean, he has yet to have anything be successful, any of his efforts be successful so far in office. And when we look at what's going on in LA, that seems like a last ditch panic effort to get something to fucking stick to the wall. And even that is problems.
Yeah, I would agree. It's a panic move, and he's trying to show strength and show that he's the one in charge. He's really calling the shots. He's the tough guy, and of course he over escalates things. He sends in the National Guard, and I heard he was calling up the Marines or getting the Marines ready. I have not heard that they actually showed up yet.
I think they
But
are
the
there
fact that
now. Yeah.
they are there,
I don't know
but the
if they're on
fact
the
that he
street,
called
but
them,
they were there last I checked.
but calling in the military against civilians, I mean, those are desperate moves by a man who doesn't know what else to do. He doesn't know how to handle the criticism of all of these protests. There have been nothing but protests against him since he took office, which is a stark contrast to his first term, where there were some, but it wasn't almost daily. It wasn't this bad, in part because he left the economy alone and things were kind of moving along and no one cared that he was in office because nothing changed. This time he's got his hands in everything and screwing everything up, and people notice.
I did a TikTok, and I'm sure a lot of Republicans are angry with me about it. I said, look, Donald Trump sends the National Guard into California without coordinating with uh, with the governor. That's basically illegal. He sends in the Marines, which is contrary to the Constitution. He's in violation of the Constitution, and we'll see how that plays out over time. Not to mention that he's got this little parade coming up, his little coming out party, if you will, in Washington, D.C. And yesterday he said, look, if people protest against this thing, we're going to come at them very forcefully, very hard. I said, first of all, that is a violation of the First Amendment. There's no debating it anymore. There's no gray area. He is an enemy of the Constitution. He's an enemy of this country. He's an enemy of the people in this country. He's in violation of his very oath. He said he would protect the Constitution. He's doing just the opposite. And I believe at this point, because it's so blatant and so out there, anybody that follows him is an enemy of this country, enemy of the Constitution and of the people. And maybe we should start treating them like the enemy instead of saying, well, you just think differently than we do. No, you're a fucking villain. You're the ones trying to take our country down. We're not going to compromise with you. We're going to kick your fucking ass.
Yeah, that's probably how it should go. Donald Trump doesn't want to handle the criticism. He thinks that, any of the protests, they should all be rounded up and silenced because how dare they question him and make him look stupid, which he doesn't need any help being made to look stupid. He does that plenty well on
No.
his own.
Yeah, he
Um,
certainly does.
but I was reading an article where he had said that about the protests being met with force, and yet there was a spokesman from the army who was doing the parade, because this is all about the army's 250th birthday, and they said, "Yeah, we're not doing crowd control as long as the protests are peaceful. We're not doing it. That's
Yeah.
not what this is about." So apparently, Donald Trump, doesn't have necessarily even the military on his side when it comes to them being met with force and, uh, you know, arrest or whatever he thinks is going to happen.
Donald Trump tends to do that. He says things that he doesn't know, doesn't understand, doesn't necessarily even believe. He just says stuff. And that's part and parcel to what I've said with him being a malignant narcissist. We saw it with Elon Musk. Elon Musk says something, Trump's got to come back harder. Elon's got to come back harder. And then it just gets out of hand. And everybody goes, well, wait a minute. You guys, you guys better fucking calm down. You're going to burn each other down. And so they say, let it lay there for a bit. But he did that with the governor of California, too. Somebody said, have you talked to uh, the governor of California? He said, yeah, we talked to him yesterday. And the governor comes out and says, yeah, that never happened. You have to question the cognitive ability of somebody who doesn't know who he talked to, or at least forgotten who and who he hasn't talked to. Um, it's an interesting face off between those two, because I think California's governor knows how to get under Donald Trump's skin, and he's quite adept at it. This will be an interesting process.
Oh yeah, it's going to be. Now Donald Trump has come back, of course, and he had said he threatened to arrest Governor Newsom, and Newsom's like, "Bring it on." And something I saw interesting from another creator said Donald Trump, the Republicans need to be talking to Donald Trump and talk him out of attempting to uh, do that, because that could be the one thing that cinches Newsom as the Democratic nominee in 28 if he gets
Yeah.
arrested by Donald Trump unlawfully. I don't know if it would work. I don't know if Newsom necessarily uh, could end up being the nominee. There's still some negative stuff about him. You got to question him doing things like, what was it? He had Charlie Kirk with the
Yeah.
podcast and some of that stuff, and it seemed almost cordial. He's going to have to do a lot of damage control still, but getting arrested by Trump could be one of the things that springboards him into the major conversation.
Well, it could. And I keep telling people, well, who is it going to be? And I go, it's still way too early to even know who that is. Somebody may emerge, somebody may die on the vine. You don't know. It's impossible to know. They're going to have to get a leader pretty quick. But who's going to be the presidential candidate for the Democrats? I don't think they want to come up with somebody, because we know what the strategy with the Republicans is. They don't have any policy. They don't really have any strategy. The only thing they do is attack whoever their opponent is. So they don't want to give them 3 years to attack one person just to, damage that person. They're probably going to wait a little bit before they expose who that is. Um, but Gavin Newsom is kind of a slimy character. I don't see him as the candidate anymore, because he represents establishment politics. And the reason people voted for Donald Trump is because they clearly didn't like establishment politics. So we need somebody who's more real, as opposed to the slick Gavin Newsom.
Yeah, I think you're right there. We got a lot going on with that. He does represent establishment, and some people are against that. But he also knows how the game is played. He knows how to do, and he's attacking Donald Trump in a way some people like. Um, I
We
don't know.
like it. Keep it
Democrats.
up.
Oh yeah, keep it up for sure. I don't know if that's enough to make him the candidate though. He's got issues. He's got the podcast issue. He's got some other stuff. It's just it's too early to tell, like you said, who that candidate could be. You're right. Republicans are going to tackle whoever it is and just go after him for 3 years. And if we come up with somebody as the front runner right now, they'll spend a year and a half going after him, even if
Yeah.
that person ultimately drops out. The damage could potentially be done because they'll just run whoever runs after it. Well, clearly they were the second choice to this other person. They were so bad Republicans will just keep running that kind of a narrative. It's what they do. They don't have policy. They don't have substance. It's all personal attacks and rage politics.
Yeah. Well, the one thing about the idea of arresting Gavin Newsom, it's interesting. Every time Gavin Newsom comes out and says something against Donald Trump, he does something else. Gavin Newsom said some shit, then he sent the Marines in. I'm just fucking doing it. Gavin Newsom went after him again, then he says, well, he should get arrested. But when they talk to Tom Homan, I think that's his name, Tom Homan, that Fred Flintstone looking fuck, the border czar, um, Tom said, yeah, I'm not going to take the bait. I think Tom Homan or Horman or whatever he is knows better to do that. Because here's the situation Donald Trump sends ICE to arrest Gavin Newsom. But Gavin Newsom is protected by the California State Police. How might that face off end up?
Not well. And
No.
the one of the things that these ICE agents, especially if they are the so-called ICE agents that we're not sure actually work for ICE, that could be the Proud Boys or some of these other fucks that, the ones that refuse to show their faces and appear to be doing things that are not by the book when it comes to typical ICE operations.
Right.
Um, when it's those people, they go up against state police. State police might have no qualms with arresting them, getting them on state charges, identifying them, all those kind of things. And then the feds have a major issue on their hands because now they got to answer, was he deputized? Are these people actually ICE agents? What were their mission parameters? All of that would come out in any sort of trial potentially. Who knows? This could end up great for Democrats as far as getting information out there. It would be nothing but an embarrassment to this administration.
But here's my question. You make a good point about these guys that are claiming to be ICE and they have no identification with them. Their faces are covered and all this. And if they went to court, yeah, we'd have to expose that. But why don't we expose that now? I mean, we got people on the street sweeping people up, and we don't even know if they work for the government or they're officially deputized, because that changes the whole perspective. If you're a guy who's a proud boy that's just helping their buddy Donnie out and picking people up on the street, that goes from an official ICE act to fucking kidnapping. Why can't we
You're
know right now that these people are official? Why can't we get that verified?
Because the people in charge are the ones covering it up. They're the ones covering for what this administration is doing. The people we'd be asking, you ask ICE to identify these agents, they'll hide behind, well, we don't comment on ongoing cases or something like that, something enough that they can say, well, we're not doing it. Our only recourse is to get this information up through the courts because Congress isn't going to act right now. They're barely holding on to power with the limited margins they have. They can't get anything done. And they're Republican led. The ones in charge want to stay loyal to Donald Trump for as long as they can until it hurts them politically. So they're not going to back off because they don't see the political damage yet because they're not thinking that far ahead. They don't see that big picture. So our only recourse is the courts. And unfortunately, the courts can only do stuff when they have a case in front of them that deals with whatever we're asking. We can't just go get a judge to say, well, you have to tell us this information. It doesn't work that way.
Well, it's interesting that you bring up the courts. Gavin Newsom filed a lawsuit in California and tried to put a stop to this Marine invasion in Los Angeles. And it went right to the court. And we would have presumed that they would have said, uh, yeah, just shut that down. That goes against the Constitution. But that's not what happened. The court says, we're not going to put a pause on it yet, but they are getting together today, Thursday, to make an expanded look at it and come up with a decision at that point. So today, the courts could come back and say, no, you got to get those Marines out of there. At which point it will be sent to the Supreme Court, and then we'll see what the fuck they do. So there is already a court issue going on with this. Problem with it is that's going to leave the Marines in there for a couple of days, and with all that going on, it's kind of a powder keg. And what people don't understand, that's exactly what Donald Trump wants. He wants this powder keg to explode. He wants it to be an issue so he can be the hero. But it's not. I mean, I was talking to Kristen. This isn't like LA's burning down. This is like 4 blocks, 3 or 4 blocks around the uh, uh, the detention center. And to suggest that all hell is raining down on Los Angeles is fucking ridiculous. Here's my question. You got a 4 block area that you're trying to protect, right? You got 4 block area. Why do you need 4,000 National Guard and 700 Marines to settle down 4 blocks? That doesn't say much for the abilities of our armed services.
Yeah, again, it's Donald Trump not thinking ahead. He doesn't think about anything. He just thinks that he needs a big show of force to show he's the boss, he's the tough guy, and he doesn't see the negative side of how it could make him look. He never thinks about how anything could make him look negative. Only what he deems as the positive, and oh, this will make me look tough or whatever the case may be. But yeah, it's 4 blocks. But this is typical of Republicans when they come to anything. We've heard it about LA, we heard it about Minneapolis, we heard it about Portland or any of the other cities where there were, protests. In some cases, yes, they did turn into riots or whatever. It was only a few blocks, but they always would say, well, they burned the whole city to the ground. Well,
I kept
no.
hearing that.
Do you know how big LA is? I've never been there, but I've got an idea of how big LA is, and it's way bigger than 4 blocks.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, LA, the city of LA is one thing, and LA County, as Christian pointed out, has like 20 million people in it. And there aren't that many people sitting in this particular kerfuffle. And people kept saying after the George thing um, that the entire city of Minneapolis burned down. I'm here to tell you, I live in a suburb of Minneapolis. I grew up in South Minneapolis where that shit happened. The entire city burned down. That's fucking ridiculous. That didn't happen. And this is what Republicans keep trying to spew. It's worse than you think. It's horrible. It's Armageddon. And unfortunately, there's some people that buy into ridiculous bullshit.
Yeah, I think part of it, though, at least when it comes to the Republican voters, the MAGA base, those kind of people, um, when you say, oh, well, 4 blocks burnt down, oh, the whole city burnt down.
Yeah.
Some of them are like some of the people that live in around here. 4 blocks is their whole town.
Yeah.
It literally is. It's a stop sign in 4 corners, and that's it. You blink and you miss it. It's easy for them to understand. And those are also the kind of people that never leave their area if they can help it. They hate going to the big city, and they don't want to go down to any of these areas. Oh, there's just too many people. And so for them to think that, oh, that city can't be that big, it was easy for it to burn down. They don't understand the size and scope of the area we're dealing with, the number of people that live in those areas. They can't wrap their head around it because they don't have a frame of reference.
Right. Right. Exactly. So let's talk about the parade a little bit. That's coming up in a couple of days. For the longest time, I thought, God, we can't have that happen. And now I'm at that point where please let that fucker happen because we know Donald Trump is a fuck up. We know this will end up be embarrassing for him. He doesn't realize it as yet. But when we're looking at tanks and helicopters and planes and all this shit going down Washington streets, it can't help but be fucking ridiculous. We've never seen anything like that in this country.
Oh yeah, it's going to be ridiculous. We're talking, they supposedly, one of the articles I read about it today said that they plan to bring tanks from as far back as World War One. They're going to have uh, military personnel in not just modern uniforms, but again, uniforms going back to at least World War One, if not farther, uh, as some kind of a show. Which that part actually I would find interesting to kind of, if
Yeah.
especially if they do it if they do it chronologically and you can see how things change in advance, I would like to actually see it. But I want to see what this parade actually brings. I want to see what the counter protest or the protest to it brings, because we know there's going to be a protest. Um, there's going to be other events going on around it, trying to draw attention away from it. And of course, Dottie's reaction to it is going to be like a toddler who doesn't have all eyes on him at all times.
Right. I'm curious as to what his perch is going to be here. Is he going to sit up in a box looking proud and loud, gazing over all these things passing him by? Because I got to tell you, you have all this military equipment, this military personnel, Donald Trump and all his fucking weirdos around him. That seems like a target to me more than anything. I mean, we know everybody and everything's going to be in one spot. We have no national security, and we got a dumb fuck working on the Department of Defense, and the FBI is a fucking mess because of the clowns running that. This seems terribly risky.
Yeah, it could be. If something were to happen, I could see what you're saying. It would be a prime target. Now, is he going to sit in a box and watch the whole thing? Maybe. It wouldn't surprise me if that's the plan for him to sit in some kind of an open box to watch the parade, uh, on some kind of a almost throne, because that's what he would want. But it also
Yep.
wouldn't surprise me if he tries to inject himself into the middle of the parade, and he's one of the attractions, and he's on a float going through, so he gets to pass by everybody as they, cheer for him he progresses through. We'll have to
That's,
see what
yeah, I
it
never
brings.
thought about that. He could be the queen of the roses.
Yeah, I could see him wanting to do something like that, because that would fit his ego. Either one of those could be the way he wants to see himself. And maybe it's something where he puts himself in the middle of the parade up to a point, he gets out and then goes sits in his throne. Who knows? With this guy, we have no idea what he's going to do other than cause this whole thing to happen, and at some point probably shit his pants.
I think there's no question he's going to shit his pants. And there's those pictures out there that make it look like he's got a catheter on too. That's kind of interesting. This guy is completely incontinent, uh, cognitively diminished, and physically broken. This guy is falling apart at the fucking seams. And when I was talking to Kristen, I said, I can only hope when that moment happens where something physically or mentally goes wrong with him, I hope it happens on stage. The more embarrassing, the better.
Well, yeah, and some people are saying it wasn't a catheter, but it looks more like he's wearing leg braces to help with the leaning that he's known to do, which is another
Could be.
sign of dementia. I saw that. I don't know which one it is. Either one is bad for him. He's physically not in the best of shape. We see that every day. The reports of him wearing diapers go back to his days on The Apprentice. Uh, and that's been 10 years ago now. He's falling apart. He's mentally declining. We see some of the stuff that he says, and he starts talking about, and you go, okay, Grandpa's sundowning again. It's what it sounds
Yeah.
like.
I
Um,
wanted to ask, I wanted to ask him because you maybe heard this. Kristen said, and I couldn't find it, but she said at some point he made a reference to Hitler at the Eiffel Tower or something like that, and it had no bearing on anything he was saying. It was just another fucking tangent that he goes off on. Did you hear anything about that?
I didn't. I didn't hear him say anything about Hitler and the Eiffel Tower, but it wouldn't surprise me.
No, hell
Um,
no.
he says a lot of things that don't make a lot of sense to anybody. Now, he thinks he's a genius and he weaves everything together and he makes it into some big coherent thing. But at the end, most people outside the dumb fucks that believe him and like him go, what the fuck was that?
Yeah. You have to think even people that support him are going, Jesus Christ. I mean, you got to think there are people that have enough self-awareness because I was like that. I think you were like that too with Joe Biden. Joe Biden's older. He's going to be slow. He's going to stutter. And when he would do something that was a little off, you go, fuck, now I know they're going to go after him about that. You would have to think that people are doing that with Donald Trump because he does it every day, all day.
I think there are probably a few. Unfortunately, for a big chunk of his supporters, they only they discount anything that's negative. I've seen comments on videos where they're showing clips of stuff Donald Trump actually said that made him sound like a dumb fuck, and they come back with, "Nope, that's AI. He didn't say that. That's AI. Oh, it's a lie. Democrats are lying about it. He didn't say it. It's not real." I don't the level of delusion for some of his supporters is amazing. They can view actual video footage of him saying something. Hell, they could probably see it live with him standing 3 feet in front of him, and they'd say he didn't say it.
In regards to what's going on in Los Angeles, we know there's not much going on there, but he's got all this firepower there. How does this ultimately end? I mean, what he wants to do is instigate some kind of firefight or some kind of violence, and I don't think he's going to accomplish that. They're talking about having the Marines there for 60 days. How does it all end? I mean, do these guys all stand around with their thumb up their asses doing nothing for 60 days and then they just pull them out because there's nothing to do? Or does the military get annoyed that they're wasting their time doing this? I don't know how this ends.
I think how it's ultimately going to end is at some point the the protests against what's going on is going to ultimately disperse,
Yeah.
and it's probably going to happen sooner rather than later. They're just going to say, okay, we're going to go protest somewhere else, and they're going to move away from this area. And then when things are calm, it's going to be quiet. Donald Trump is going to back it all off very quietly. We're not going to hear about it any fanfare, and that's going to be the end of it. It's going to go out with a whimper unless something sets the powder keg off. I just don't see it ending up any other way.
So do you think he
Um,
goes to another town and try to pull the same thing off, or does he learn a lesson?
oh no, he'll try it again. The next town that has got major protests, they'll try it again. But he may even respond quicker the next time, trying to again set it off. And ultimately, I don't think he ever gets his wish for something big being set up in motion. I don't see it happening.
No, I don't either. You know, when we're talking about ICE going into some place, it isn't that big a crowd of people. And let's face it, ICE goes into Los Angeles or a small portion of Los Angeles. They lost before they fucking started. They all got ran into a fucking building and hid. That's why he wanted to bring the National Guard in, because ISIS fucking lost. And ISIS is going to lose every time they go into any place. You know, they want to go to Chicago. Good luck with that, motherfucker. They had troubles here in Minnesota. They're going to have some troubles in some other places. And it's never going to look good for him. He's going to, he'll double down, triple down, but he'll look foolish every time.
Oh yeah, he's going to keep looking foolish, and that's just what it is. Like you said, the ICE agents they ran and hid in the building. They lost when they ever started. And what a lot of people don't realize is Donald Trump thinks he's being the tough guy by going out. Oh, we're sending in ICE to do all these raids. They're going out after people who are working. Like they raided a Home Depot where there were people working, doing a job. These aren't you know the hardcore criminals that they want you to believe they are. They're not out there. They're not arresting them mid robbery. No, they're out there pulling them off their job site where they're doing whatever they were doing. It's ridiculous.
Well, let's be honest, what's going on? They came out there and said, we're going to deport 3,000 people a day. They're not even fucking close. They said they were going to only deport the criminals, the insane people, and all the stuff that Donald Trump said. Well, when it didn't turn out that they were deporting enough and it didn't look draconian enough, they said, just go to Home Depot and grab whoever. And they're grabbing women and kids and all this stuff. Um, it's really a bad look for them because now there's video and audio of kids crying and women screaming and stuff like this. None of this is going to play well for Donald Trump. Donald Trump has been a failure with the deportations. Obama deported way more than he did. And this is what I'm saying. Everything he's tried, tariffs, deportations. They keep failing, and he keeps trying to find that next thing that will finally pull him out of the fire. But he's incompetent, so there is nothing because he doesn't have any plans, and he just fucks up every time.
Yeah, exactly. He doesn't have any plans. He doesn't think before he acts. And like you said, Obama and Biden both were able to deport even more people with less expenditure of money, but they also did it the correct way. That they
Right.
were able to, they had their court date. They took them through all the due process and still cost less money. Donald Trump just wants the show of force to show he's, again, as we keep saying, he's the tough guy. And he doesn't see how it makes him look ridiculously weak and pathetic. And he keeps failing, he keeps fucking up. It's all he's ever done. He's only ever been a fuck up his entire life. He doesn't know how to react to it. Um, it's unreal how his supporters will sit there and excuse anything he does when all he does is fail.
The other day, did you see the hearing where they were questioning Pete Hegseth? That didn't go well for Pete. Pete was a disaster, as you'd expect him to be.
I didn't see that one.
Well, he's an absolute joke. In fact, Gavin Newsom has said that he's a fucking joke. But they asked him, how much was this going to cost to send people to California? And the answer was $134 million. And I find that interesting. $134 million. The parade is going to be 50 to $100 million. So we're talking $250 million for nothing. And they're supposed to be finding and get rid of waste. Seems like they're going the opposite fucking way.
Oh yeah. And then this $250,000, we got nothing out of it. How do you send, what was it, 2,000 or 3,000 National Guard troops, whatever the number was, and the few Marines they sent? How does that run into $134 million? That doesn't make any sense, especially only for a couple of weeks.
Right.
Those numbers don't add up. That sounds extremely wasteful. Uh, and then you got this parade that's going to run 50 million, 90 million. I've heard different numbers,
Yeah,
all
me
for
too.
nothing. And then you still got to then you got to deal with, on top of it, one of the reasons we didn't have a parade the last time Trump was in office is they were worried about all the damage to city roads. Then the government's going to probably have to pay for all that damage too. It just, they don't, they don't get rid of any waste or fraud or abuse. It's not like what they think. What they think waste, fraud, and abuse is anything or anybody getting money that they don't approve of. Clearly, it's wasteful. They have no idea what waste, fraud, and abuse actually is.
Well, an interesting figure that's out there. They were comparing how much Donald Trump administration spent in the last 4 months and compared to a year ago under Joe Biden. Same time frame, same everything. Donald Trump's administration has spent almost $300 million, or is it billion, $300 billion more than they spent back a year ago. These people are supposed to be cutting waste and cutting taxes and doing all this stuff. It's just not working. It's just not working. I mean, I don't know why the media doesn't sit down and say, you said this, this is what happened, please explain. But nobody's willing to do that in the media. I'm pretty fed up with all media at this point, from Jake Tapper, CNN, most of MSNBC, with a couple of exceptions, certainly OAN and Fox. They're just not trustworthy anymore. There's nothing in mainstream media that's trustworthy anymore.
No, they're not. They should be sitting down asking those hard questions. But if they would have been asking the hard questions going back all the way to Trump's first run for president, in 2015, he would have been made to look like the fool that he was and not a serious candidate. He wouldn't have made it through the primaries. But they didn't do that because he's good for ratings. And they're still looking at that he's good for ratings. They want to bring the monkey out, put him on TV, show how egregious he can be because people tune in to go, what's this shit show going on? What's he going to say now? And they make money. It's all about lining their own pockets. It's not about the truth. It's not about doing right by the American people or anything like that. It's ridiculous. These news networks are horrible.
Well, and we heard the story. Terry Moran, who interviewed Donald Trump, is one of the few people that pushed back on him. Uh, Tweeted something out that he was dumb and hateful, and then he got suspended. And then we just heard that he got fired. He's done. They're not renewing his contract. And you think, Jesus Christ, that's ABC. We can't trust ABC now. Then we've got 60 Minutes, absolute paragon of journalism for decades, and they capitulate to Donald Trump. We can't trust 60 Minutes or CBS anymore. Who can we trust? Well, pretty much nobody but independent folks here on the internet.
Yeah, because they're the ones, you know, people like you, me, Aaron Parnas, Midas Touch, and some of the others. We're out spreading the truth because we don't care if it's, if it's good for followers, good for ratings. We're out there just telling it like it is.
Right.
And we don't answer to corporate bosses in a lot of cases. And that's the problem. The corporate news media, they don't care about anything other than money. And they see this method working and making them enough, or they don't want to risk it and change anything to make any sort of waves or ripples that might cost them money or get them scrutinized by this administration because it might cost them money. It's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Well, it is ridiculous, and it's very dangerous. I mean, that First Amendment that Donald Trump is trying to supersede is very important to maintaining democracy. And in that First Amendment, we're supposed to have free speech and freedom of the press. Clearly, we don't have freedom of the press when it comes to the mainstream media because they're all being controlled or directed by Donald Trump. And when that is the case, nobody has the real story. Nobody can come together and even argue anything because everybody's got a different story. Uh, our media is a severe problem in this country right now because if people are ill informed and all you have to do is talk to a Trumplefuck and you know how little they know, that makes it very dangerous in this country and dangerous for the democracy.
Yeah, I would agree. They're getting different stories everywhere you turn. They're not getting the full facts. Um, I don't know how you fix it. We can't fix any of it until Donald Trump is out of the picture. I don't know that they're necessarily at the full discretion of Donald Trump. It's more that they're just trying to stay off of his radar so they can try to, make again the money that they can make without getting the negative impact of him trying to do things like, well, we're going to pull your license and make things difficult or whatever. He's got to go. He's going to go at some point, and it's going to take us a long time to fix all the damage he has done, specifically to the press, but just in general. There's a lot of things he has fucked up that's going to take decades to fix.
No, I think with regards to the media, there is a certain amount of fear there. I don't want to fuck this up. I don't want to not be able to do this merger because Donald Trump has to sign off on it. That's some of it. But we have these oligarchs that own these media outlets, and they're purposefully uh, doing things on their outlets to support Donald Trump because, well, that's who the fuck they are. Um, and even in the independent media, we're seeing a lot of people who were reporters on mainstream media now coming to YouTube and TikTok and stuff. And a lot of them are doing a good job, Acosta and some of the other people. But there are some people coming from mainstream media like Chris Cizilla. He's coming on and he's trying to play the game like he played it on mainstream media, like playing both sides, and that I find kind of fucking annoying. I mean, here's a guy that's now apart from mainstream media, and he's still playing it like that. And I'll tell you why he's doing that. He's doing the exact opposite thing of what you should do when you're out here. You're trying to adjust so that you get the most views and the most followers. My theory is, I think your theory is, you do what you do, you let the chips fall where they may, you get the followers, you get the views, or you don't. But at least you've got some integrity in the process of doing it.
Yeah, exactly. Um, and you can kind of both sides it on certain things where if the Republican side does something that is good, I'll call it out. hey, they did this. This is great. I agree with them. But problem is, they're not doing much of that anymore. Everything they're
No, there's
doing is
nothing
so
you can.
egregious, it's ridiculous. So you can't really both sides it. But yeah, the ones that are trying to both sides it, they are going after, you know, as many followers, as many views, and as big of a paycheck as they can get out of it. And it's ridiculous. Um, and I wish more people would see it as ridiculous and then not give them those views.
Yeah, yeah. That's one of the problems. We get people who see something on mainstream media or even the internet and say that must be real because he said it. And the fact of the matter is, we need people in this country to be a little more discerning about truth. Too many people are too fucking lazy and they just listen to the clickbait or the headlines and they say that must be true. And as I said, one of the big problems in this country is, of course, the media, but the laziness and the misinformed people in this country. That is really a fucking problem and why we have the divisiveness in this country.
Yeah, a lot of people are very misinformed about everything that's going on. They don't know all the facts. They don't know how things work. I saw somebody arguing in the comments who appeared to be on the left side of everything, but was still arguing in the comments of a video that presidents can't run for 10 years or can't be a person can't be president for 10 years max. And if they are, or if you're advocating that they can be president for 10 years, you just want a dictator. No, that's specifically what the president can do. If the vice president takes over, they can have up to two of their own terms and 2 years of somebody else. That's 10 years. That's how it is spelled out. But they were adamant that we were wrong. And this was somebody that appeared to be on the left on everything else. You got both sides that are misinformed. They don't know all the facts. It's dangerous.
Well, I think we can agree that we have major problems. There's really nothing good about the Republican Party at this point. I challenge anybody to tell me anything about the Republican Party that's positive for this country or for the people in it. But we have a lot of problems on the Democratic side too. We have divisiveness there. We have certain people that don't want to do anything. We have other people that do want to do things, but the lazy people are pushing back against them. I was talking to Kristen about this, um, and I'll bring it up here because I don't know really how to think about it. You heard of these stories, like with Rockland, New York, and the weird shit that was going on with the election, and then there is this other article that comes out that says Kamala should have won because they did this to the machines and they did that to the machines, and everybody's getting very excited about that. And I said, you want to pull back a little bit. Democrats are like fucking Charlie Brown. Lucy's holding the football. Charlie's going to kick it, and Lucy pulls it out every time. And that happens a lot to Democrats because they see something they really want to believe, and then they go for it, and they get disappointed. Now, I'm not saying that any of that stuff is not true. The idea that Donald Trump and the Republicans fucked around and were sketchy with regards to the election, I guarantee it's true. But if it's going nowhere, we're getting all excited about nothing. I said, just sit back, watch. If it's really something, it'll start an unraveling. And it'll take some time to get to the point where we'll see some changes or some actions over it. But you no doubt heard those stories, and I'm curious as to what you thought when you heard them, because I know you're a little more cynical like me about that.
Well, yeah, I am a little cynical about it, but what I'm interested to see is what discovery comes out with this case out of Rockland, New York. If they do have the evidence that they claim to have, that there was some, tampering with elections. One of the things they pointed out is there were entire districts, uh, voting districts where Kamala Harris got 0 votes, and that's for that happening once is almost statistically unlikely, but for it to happen in multiple spots, it just makes you go, there's got to be something wrong here. She should have gotten it, mathematically should have gotten at least 1 vote somewhere. Um, the whole thing sounds sketchy, so I want to see what comes out of the discovery. But I did a TikTok on it, and what I said there is what I'm going to say here. Aside from figuring out what happened and trying to put safeguards in to stop it from happening again, it doesn't matter what this court case says. If they came out and proved Donald Trump and Elon Musk did something at this election and he should have lost, well, uh, it doesn't change. The vote's already been certified. Congress has already certified the vote. Donald Trump is president. The only thing that could happen would be for Congress to step in, impeach, and remove, and that's it. That's
Right.
all they can do. There is
Because the
no
DOJ
mechanism.
ain't the DOJ ain't doing nothing. Not at this
Well,
current condition.
even if the DOJ wasn't as bad as it is under Pam Bondi, there's nothing they can do. There's
Yeah, true.
because there's no mechanism to remove Donald Trump at this point other than 25th Amendment or impeach and remove. There's nothing in there about, well, if fraud was proven, the winner can serve out the rest of the term. There's nothing like that in the Constitution, in part because the founders never expected this to be an issue. They expected that the parties and people running it would have some integrity. They didn't expect anything like this. So the only thing that could happen is Donald Trump getting impeached and removed if Congress chooses to act. And even then, all that ends us up with is President J.D. Vance. It will not put Kamala Harris back in office um, at all. The only way that could happen is if it happens after the midterms when Democrats probably have control of the House and the Senate. And if they somehow made Kamala Harris Speaker of the House and removed Trump and Vance at the same time. But
Uh,
I don't see that happening. That's a ridiculous long shot. That sounds like one of the conspiracy theories we kept hearing out of Republicans. Oh, they're going to impeach Joe Biden and make Donald Trump Speaker of the House and put him back in office that way. We heard that from them for 4 years, and it never
yeah.
happened. It.
Yeah, that's the
I'm
thing.
not. I
It
don't have.
sounds too much like a Republican conspiracy theory. I mean, I flat out hear people saying, well, they're going to expose that it was a fraudulent election. They're going to remove Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, and then Kamala will automatically be the president. Even if they found that fraud, who's to say there wasn't some fraud on the Democratic side? I don't know for sure, but my guess was if that were the case, that would be unprecedented, never happened before. You just have to run a new election and see who wins at that point. That's what we'd have to do.
A problem is there's no mechanism for doing that. There's nothing built
Right.
into the current law. The only thing that is from what is built into the Constitution right now, the only way to remove a sitting president is to impeach and remove him. And if they were to take out Trump and Vance claiming that it was fraudulent and they had the votes to do it and they removed them both, the next in line would still be Speaker of the House Mike Johnson right now.
Yeah.
Kamala
Yeah.
wouldn't become president. There wouldn't be a new election. That's what's built in. The people are looking for any sort of hope, and they're hoping that they're just like in some ways a lot like the MAGA Republicans. They're hoping something comes up to get them the result that they think should have happened in the election.
Right.
And unfortunately, it's just not there. What we need to do is
That
focus on winning the midterms and then turning around and winning the presidency in 2028 with whoever the front runner candidate is actually going to be.
Yeah, both you and I, when we do our TikToks, we trade in hope, but I don't want to trade in hope that's just fucking ridiculous. That's not going to happen. I would love for that to happen, but I know it's not, so I'm not even going to give it the time of day. You know what? There's something about the Elon Musk and Donald Trump argument that people haven't talked about that I think is really getting in Donald Trump's head because he's a paranoid sort. All right. Now, Elon said that about Jeffrey Epstein and all that stuff. But what he said that isn't getting much play is he said Donald Trump should be removed and J.D. Vance should be the president. Now, keep in mind, J.D. Vance and Elon Musk and Peter Thiel, they're the tech bros. Now, all of a sudden, Donald Trump's got to look at J.D. Vance. Are you trying to come up from behind me? Are you trying to get me out of here? I guarantee you he's thinking about that because he's suspicious and he's paranoid. And that all may be true. That may be true. We thought that after he was elected that it was just a matter of time they're going to kick out Donald Trump so J.D. Vance can pop in there. but it's got to be fucking with his head after Elon said that. That's got to be making him crazy.
Oh, I guarantee you it's making him crazy. And Vance is doing exactly what JD Vance was, or what I said JD Vance was going to do right after the election. For the most part, he's lying low. He's not saying a whole lot publicly other than the obligatory things where he's got to support the president for the most part. He's keeping his nose clean for that moment when he's got to step forward and, whether they 25th Amendment or impeach and remove Trump, if they go that route, that way he's got his nose out of it. He's not making the public comments. Elon is kind of fucking him over by saying, well, JD Vance should be president, Trump should be impeached. Because it's bringing a spotlight back on JD Vance into this whole mess. JD wants to be out of the loop as best as he can. That way, if something happens to Trump, he can step up and say, well, see, it wasn't really me. It was these other, it was everybody else. I'm just doing the job I have to do that I was elected to do. That way he's got some credibility for 28. That's what he's trying to do. It's not going to work, but
JD would be the weakest presidential candidate in 2028 that you could possibly think of because most Trumplafucks don't like him. And honestly, as we talked about before, regardless of whether or not he had some part in Donald Trump being impeached or whatever, he's going to get the blame. He's going to get the blame. Anybody that takes over for Donald Trump is going to get the blame. And that's going to hurt them in any election that there might be. But we've talked about impeachment before, and both of us have believed that there could become a point where the Republicans impeach him, and that's the only way it can be done at this point. Until 2026, he cannot be impeached unless the Republicans do it. Uh, and at this point, it doesn't look like there's any taste for it in the House per se. But if they can't get this bill passed and the oligarchs get pissed and they pull support, that's when you'll see the change in the Republican Party in the House and the Senate.
yeah, and that follows back to kind of what I've been saying the whole time. It's not until their own reelection chances are in
Right.
jeopardy. If they think losing, you know, rich donor money is what's going to hurt them get from getting reelected, maybe they pull the trigger then. That's you know Republicans are using Donald Trump for as long as they can for their own purposes, but they will cut ties when they think it's beneficial. Problem is they're not seeing things, you know, they're going one election at a time. They're not seeing the big picture of how being associated with Donald Trump will eventually be uh, the one thing that is their downfall of all of them.
Well, don't you think? I mean, this is my perspective, but like you say, they're waiting for the last minute and then they'll turn on Donald Trump. I feel like they're already too late. I think they're too late because what's going on in Los Angeles, how all the failures that are going on, the stock market going down, all this shit. I mean, what the fuck are you waiting for? How bad does it have to be before you step away from Donald Trump? That's a smart thing to do because he's going to be a liability going into 2026. There's no question about it. Um, I don't know. How long
I
does it
don't know what
take?
that I don't know what that moment is. I think right now they're weighing it and saying, well, even though he's failing, blah blah blah, it's still very close yet to when he got elected, so it's too close to turn on him yet. Because we were just really supporting him this last election. People are going to see us as being two-faced. We need to give him a little more rope to hang himself figuratively with. Uh, they're trying to play both sides. They don't realize that, like you said, the moment is probably already past, but they're trying to wait until what they think is the right moment so they can get the most out of him while still end up walking away from him.
It's too late, man. That stink is pretty heavy. That funk is pretty heavy. Now, I wanted to bring this up because I talked to Kristen about it, and she and I think, kind of disagree about this. Uh, but she agreed that she's not certain it's going to happen. But she said these people want to be in power. And if they have these connections with the election machines or whatever, voting machines, that there won't be a 26 election and they'll just stay in power as long as they can. And my belief in it is it's one thing to play a presidential election. That's so much simpler than playing all these little fucking elections, 200 elections for the House and whatever. Uh, I just don't see how they pull that off, especially when we look at their accomplishments thus far. Everything they've tried, they fucking failed. We got the Apple Dumpling Gang running this show. Even if there was a possibility, we know they're going to fuck it up somehow. What do you think about the 2026 elections? I think they'll be there. There may be some concerns over it, but it will happen.
I think 2026 elections are going to happen as scheduled. I think history is going to probably hold true, and that the party in power will lose seats, and they can't lose many seats and still stay in power. So the House is probably going to flip. The Senate could probably flip, especially if Elon is still on the outs with Donald Trump and not financially backing Republicans. However, Democratic candidates need to be wary about, you know, taking the money from Musk because that could end up backfiring on him. So if Musk is offering you money, don't take it, in my opinion. But if he wants to run ads from his own PACs without actually donating straight to these campaigns, can't do much about that. But the 2026 elections are going to happen. There's no mechanism for there not to be an election. There is no mechanism for stopping it, preventing it, whatever. And they're going to do it. They're going to do these elections and they're going to get their asses kicked. And then they're going to be looking around going, what the fuck just happened? They have no idea what's coming.
No, they don't. Well, and there's already some signs about Republicans getting a little fidgety. There's a Republican representative in the House, and we know that there's a very thin margin for the Republicans. But Representative Mark Green said, I'm going to vote on this budget bill and then I'm the fuck out of here. I'm sure he's looking at, I got to vote for this bill. And if I vote for this bill, this is going to crucify me in the end. So I'm just going to run like a little bitch, is what he's going to do. And I think you're going to see more people doing that. We saw a lot of retirements and resignations leading up to this past election. We're going to see even more out of the Republican Party because they know that they're on a fucking wagon train going off the fucking cliff at this point, and they don't want to die in the process. And it's not even good enough to step back and say, "Oh, Trump's an asshole." They got to get out of the fucking business. That's what they're doing. They're going to be presidents of colleges or whatever they fuck they can do while they still have some credibility.
Yeah, there's like this. Was it Mark Green? He said he's going to step away, and he's got a job in the private sector. I don't remember what it is. Now he claimed he wasn't gonna run for reelection in 24, and then did.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
but now he sees the writing on the wall. But of course, he wants to stay and make sure this bill passes first with whatever support because they know, like you said, they don't have the margin needed to afford to lose one vote. Because that's what this bill passed the House the last time before any Senate adjustments to it. Um, it only passed by one vote. If he steps away, suddenly it doesn't pass. Then you got the guy in Nebraska who goes, "Well, I didn't know that the bill defunding the courts and trying to prevent courts from doing the nationwide injunctions was in there. I wouldn't have voted for it if I knew that." Well, that's two votes. If it goes back and that's still in there, maybe they vote against it. Now it doesn't pass. It's it's sketchy. They are so thin right now that they're trying to, again, like with everything, game the system as much as they can. But they're trying this, like this guy backing away. He's not gonna run for reelection, and he's even getting the fuck out of the House well ahead of the end of the term because I think he sees the writing on the wall for how bad it's gonna get.
Well, it's interesting. A news story came out earlier today, and it said while they're going through this process, 13 House Republicans who supported President Trump's big beautiful bill sent a letter Friday urging Senate GOP leaders to scale back some of its clean energy cuts, sparking pushback from conservatives and hardliners. This bill's in trouble. The people who voted for it are now saying, yeah, maybe you should change it. Maybe we shouldn't do that. And then you brought up something that your buddy Chuck Grassley brought up in the Senate.
Motherfucking Chuck Grassley. I don't agree with that man on much, but he did come out. There was a news article today where he was talking about the big beautiful bill and that controversial rule in there that we were just talking about the courts not being able to give nationwide injunctions. Chuck Grassley said that that is probably going to have to be removed before the bill can get passed out of the Senate. It's not. He didn't say he disagreed with the idea, but he said it's not. He what did he say? It was not birdable, which he's referring to the bird rule, which allows for budget bills to pass with a simple majority, not through the normal 60 vote process, by using reconciliation. Well, this doesn't have enough to do with the budget, in Chuck Grassley's opinion, and it's going to have to be removed, or it's going to face the filibuster and die anyway.
Yeah.
And Chuck Grassley knows a little bit about this, and it's in his wheelhouse because he is the head of the Judiciary Committee. That is, the committee that would deal with things involving the courts. But I don't agree with him much. He needs to retire. The man has been in office longer than I have been alive. And he is seeking reelection in 2028. I talk about it all the time. He has already filed the paperwork. He will be 95 years old in 2028. And he wants to run for another term. It is ridiculous. He should go. But at least in this case, he is saying the right thing when it comes to this amendment.
Yeah. Well, interesting thing about it, he brings up Senator Robert Byrd. He comes out of West Virginia. He's dead now, of course. He died in 2010, but he was born in 1917. Those fuckers could have gone to high school together. Bird
Yeah,
and Grassley, he's so fucking old, and Bird's been
yeah,
dead
they could
for
have.
15 years.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. I just think the bill has so many problems. I mean, if you're going to pass a bill, uh, you're going to have some problems here and there, but at every turn, we've got the House saying, yeah, maybe not. The Senate saying definitely not. I personally think that may be the the end game for Donald Trump. You know, he comes in, all the rich people think he's a great guy, then he crashes the stock market, the tariffs, and all this shit, and they're all hoping against hope of getting this big tax cut. They don't pass this bill and they don't get the tax cut. They've gotten absolutely nothing out of Donald Trump, and they're going to be pissed.
Oh, yeah, they are definitely going to be pissed. Of course, Donnie only cares about, in part because this tax bill would cut his own taxes. I think that's part of what he wants there. And of course, then there's always the kickbacks from his wealthy buddies. Um, but when this bill doesn't pass, you're going to see some of the big donors probably cutting their donations back to the Republican Party, and the Republicans can't afford to lose that because numbers wise, they don't have the same number of small dollar donors that Democrats do. They rely on their big dollar donors. And if those go away, they're going to be in real trouble in the next couple of elections.
Do you think in these votes, Donnie's going to do what he always does? Angry Daddy Donnie calls him up on the phone and says, "You better fucking do it," and he threatens them in some way. And it's usually worked up to this point. It didn't work in the last one because he only got one person to go to the other side. Um, I don't even know that that's going to work because if he puts that kind of pressure on them, the pressure they're getting from the public is far more important to them because, as we know, Donald Trump is probably on the downside of his career, maybe his life. And these people are going to try to live another life after Donnie's gone. And they're not going to be able to do it if they continually capitulate to Donnie and fuck over people's lives.
Yeah, he's going to try. He's going to try to bully. He's going to threaten to primary him, but that threat now doesn't carry as much weight as it did before. Now that
Right.
Elon and him are on the outs, Elon had the money to step in and fund primary challengers, et cetera, and not blink an eye. Now who is Donald Trump going to threaten him? Well, so and so is going to donate all the money to primary you or whatever. We're already seeing some of these Republicans having primary challengers. There was a state senator here in Iowa whose name I can't think of, came out last week and said he's a Republican. He's entering the race as a primary challenger to junior senator from Iowa, Joni Ernst,
Yeah.
and going to say, they're already facing primary challengers. The threat of being primaried, I don't think is going to weigh nearly as heavily. And then what else is Donnie going to do with them? Is he going to send ICE after sitting members of Congress? They're going to laugh at him. It's
He's
ridiculous.
already
I
done
don't.
that. He's already done that. The Democrat had them
Yeah,
arrested.
and that went nowhere so far.
Well,
Um,
I will tell you this. What's her name again? Can't remember her name now. I was just reading it. It went to a grand jury, and she got an indictment with three charges, which isn't crazy because the only person talking in a grand jury is the prosecution. But it's going to trial. It's going to trial, and I'll guarantee you this: Donald Trump and the Trumplafucks are more concerned about it going to trial than the representative is. I think she wanted to go to trial to make a point.
yeah, I think you're right there with that one. And what was the old thing they used to say? You could get a grand jury to indict a ham sandwich. I
Yeah,
mean, it, just because the charges are brought doesn't mean anything. The discovery in this case is all stuff Donald Trump doesn't want. They were just hoping that, oh, well, we'll bring the charges and we'll bring that smoke and they'll back down. He's
yeah.
messing with the wrong group of people. But again, I don't think the sitting members of Congress that are on the Republican side, if he threatens to start doing that to them, I don't. I think they're going to be in the same boat. Yeah, we're not worried. Bring it. You know, they're
Yeah,
going to
that
have
that
to.
that rep was Representative LaMonica McIver out of New Jersey. She was the one that was arrested, the representative. Now she's been indicted. There is going to be a trial, and this is going to be interesting because I don't think Donald Trump wanted this smoke, as you said, because now there's going to be a lot of digging into things. I mean, can't they? Can't she? You talk about discovery. Whoever arrested her, or whoever she got in this argument with, don't they have to come to court too and reveal who the fuck they are?
Yeah, they will have to. You know, there's going to probably have to be discovery. Witnesses will have to be called forward. Any of the supposed ICE agents that were outside when this all took place, they would all be called as witnesses, and they can be called by either side with a subpoena. And if you defy a subpoena, you're facing jail time. Would
Absolutely.
they be willing to go back to jail if these are Proud Boys or Oath Keepers or whatever, or would they be willing to go to jail at all if they are not ICE agents for defying a subpoena? Maybe, because that might be a less sentence than going in for impersonating officers or what have you. But I just don't think there's going to be enough evidence for a conviction, and any of the stuff that comes out is also going to be stuff the administration doesn't want. They're probably going to hope she takes some kind of a plea deal, but I don't see it happening.
No, I don't think she will. I get the impression because right after she was arrested, they came to her and said, "Well, if you just confess, we'll call this even and we'll let you go." And of course, that's what they wanted. But then she says no, so they doubled down. We're going to get you indicted. We're going to take you to trial. You sure you want to do this? It's all intimidation, and she's not buying it. She's a smart lady, and she's saying, "Fucking let's go." Because she knows she's not going to get convicted. That's crazy. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, she knows where she stands on everything. And the problem with these Republicans, they don't. They are so inept at everything they're doing. Uh, they're just ridiculous at this point. What do you do with people like that other than we got to get them out of office? You know, and when they're out of power, they may end up actually being on the other side of it, then facing charges for the stuff they're doing themselves, bringing false charges. You know, if they were involved in any of this ICE stuff, whatever the case may be, some of these people may be facing issues themselves, and then they will be the ones off taking begging for plea deals to get out of it because they actually will have criminal liability.
Talking to Will about this, and I'm curious as to what you think. Will gets a little wound up now and again, and I appreciate that in him. Kristen was saying I was getting a little unhinged. I go, no, that's cool. We need to be. Everything that's going on today is justifiably something to get upset about. Uh, but there's obviously a lot of crimes being committed in the Trump administration, crimes that aren't going to be addressed while Pam Bondi and Donald Trump controls the DOJ. But when this is over with, there is going to be people that are going to be called on the carpet. They're going to be indicted. There's probably going to be some trials. Now, Will has said, and to me, this sounds almost like something a Republican would say, and I'm not putting Will down. I hope it's true. He says, don't be surprised if there are some tribunals, military type things, with the likes of Pete Hegseth or some of these other fucking clowns. Do you think that's a realistic possibility, a tribunal, Nuremberg type thing?
I don't know about a Nuremberg type thing, but now I will admit I'm not a military expert by any means, but I
No.
believe that even if you were an officer like Hegseth was an officer at one point, I believe he
Yeah.
made the rank of was it major.
Yeah. Something
But
like that.
if you were an officer, even after being out of the service, if you go against the U.S. Code of Military Justice, that you can still be court-martialed after your time out of the and you've been out. I believe I could be wrong.
No, I think
He
you're
could
right
be
there.
facing court. It might not be a military Nuremberg style tribunal, but he might be facing court martial and time at Leavenworth.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the with regards to Will's much smarter about that stuff than you and I are, so I have to defer to him. It just seems like a Trump-fuck thing to say. We're tribunals and we're going to hang people and all that shit. But with Pete Hegseth particularly, I mean, little things like sending the Marines into Los Angeles in contradiction of the Constitution. Those things are going to get placed at his feet when it's all said and done and Donald Trump is no more, people are going to say, what the fuck were you doing? And what kind of mess did you leave in the Department of Defense? Because we're hearing now that there's all kinds of chaos. Every time I open a paper or watch something online, they say, well, it's a matter of time before Hegseth quits. People are just pushing back against him.
Yeah, I mean, he is woefully unqualified for being where he's at. He's in over his head. He's never going to admit that he's in over his head. And he's set up to be the fall guy for a lot of the things militarily as being Secretary of Defense. That way, Donald Trump can say, well, it wasn't really me, it was Hegseth. He's responsible for all that. Donald Trump is setting these people up to take the fall for all the things he's doing if he can, because he thinks he's a genius and he's going to skate away scot free. And the people that are supporting him are so power hungry or what have you that they're not seeing the problem with what's going on themselves. They don't see that they are going to be the ones left holding the bag.
Yeah, that's the amazing thing. For as often as we've seen that type of thing happen, it's amazing these people don't think it's going to happen to them. But I think Pete Hegseth is going to get nailed ultimately. He'll be the whipping boy. He will be the goat, and he will get crucified. And he'll be like Rudy Giuliani or Mike Lindell or any of these other fuckers that thought they had all of Donald Trump's love, but they get thrown under the bus as soon as it becomes inconvenient to have them around.
Yeah, they're going to be out, and they're going to go, what the fuck just happened? Now, there's a chance that Donald Trump may pardon some of these people ahead of time, but that doesn't seem likely because Donald Trump doesn't do things for other people until it's beneficial for him in some way. And a
Like
pardon
two
would
million
actually make it
bucks, $1 million. He's
maybe,
selling
but
that
even
shit.
then,
So
with some of this, though, a pardon actually would be detrimental to Donald Trump, even if they paid him, because then they can't plead the fifth because there's no incrimination. They can be compelled to testify, which would mean they would have to put all of it out in the open at Donald Trump's feet. Now, whether or not he thinks that clearly is another question, but it's possible that he's looking at things like that, going, "Well, I don't want them to turn on me, so I'm going to let them just take the fall, and I'm not going to save them."
Don't you think when Donald Trump is no longer president, everybody was upset about all the court cases and how he got away with things and how he did this and how he did that. In just the 4 or 5 months he's been president now, he's got plenty of other fucking crimes that he can be indicted for when he's finally out of office. And there ain't much they can do about it. You can talk about the immunity thing, but a lot of this stuff doesn't have anything to do with immunity, like some of the bribes, like getting a plane from Qatar, and having these $1 million fundraisers that are supposed to be on his own time, but they aren't on his own time. I mean, there's a lot of shit that he can be brought to court for after he's out of office.
Oh, I guarantee there's going to be stuff that the question will be whether or not he makes it to that point.
Right.
Uh, because even if he gets removed by impeachment or the 25th or what have you, um, he would have to make it until a Democrat is in office, unless JD Vance decides to turn and go completely after Donald Trump, trying to completely break himself away from the shadow of Trump and that stench by turning on him completely. But I don't think he will, because he knows he'll turn off the segment of Trump voters that will only vote if Trump's involved. So again, I don't think it'll happen until there's a Democrat in charge, and he may
I agree.
ultimately get away with a lot of it just by virtue of not being physically around at that
Or
point, or
mentally of
mentally
sound mind.
aware. Yeah, I mean, there was question as to whether or not he was mentally sound enough to stand trial for his uh, 34 felony convictions the first time,
Yeah.
and we'll have to see how that all plays out. But there's so much that's going on with him. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I think after this administration is over, it wouldn't surprise me if you see one really big, or maybe a couple small amendments added to the Constitution by with bipartisan support, adding in some limitations on presidential power, limitations on presidential ability, maybe some clarifications of things, uh, to rephrase certain things, just to avoid somebody like Donald Trump coming to power ever again. Because we've seen it before with Congress. When they think, when they don't like something that happens, they can and will act rather quickly. Look what they did with the 22nd Amendment. They had it passed and ratified in like 3 years after uh, they decided to put limits on, in part because of FDR running for 4 consecutive terms.
Right.
So I think you're going to see some changes coming, uh, when it comes to stuff like limits on who can run, limits to power, because Congress is going to want to reel back in a bunch of the authoritarian style power Donald Trump is trying to claim for himself, and they're not going to want to deal with it after he's out of power.
We've talked about the ultimate crash that every malignant narcissist suffers eventually. And there's so many things going on, whether it be the tariffs, the economy, deportation, the misuse of the military. What do you think ultimately is going to be the crash that takes him out, takes out MAGA altogether? It's going to come. I just don't know which of the many things is going to do it.
Oh, that's a tough one. I don't know what the ultimate downfall of him is going to be. I think it might end up being, he already has kind of turned against Republicans over the years, calling them rhinos and things like that. It might end up being when congressional Republicans get to that moment where they think it's more politically favorable to turn on him, and then he keeps going after them, that they just say, okay, well, we're done here, and that might be it. But I don't know what scandal or what thing is going to ultimately be his downfall. I mean, for all we know, it could be something we haven't even thought of yet, knowing him.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I was surprised by, and it may come up again sometime soon, this situation with Los Angeles, the court case, assuming he's told to take the people out of there, he'll send it to the Supreme Court. And if the Supreme Court finds in favor of pulling the Marines out of there, Donnie Trump is going to be pissed because he'll be embarrassed. He's already gone after Leonard Leo of the Federalist Society, which strikes me as crazy because they got all the money. They're the ones picking the judges, and Donnie Trump's happy because he's not getting his way. But Leonard Leo has a lot of money, and the Federalist Society has a lot of money. If you're already going after them, you're in a tough situation.
Yeah, and he's going after, he's turned on Elon, who's got a lot of money. When
Yeah,
he starts going after his money people, um, they're going to walk away from him, and then he's going to be left going, "What the fuck do I do now?"
yeah,
But he doesn't think that far ahead. He's not worried about them
no,
backing away from him. He doesn't even think of it right now as a real possibility. He's doing what he always does, which is he's reacting. He's not getting his way. He's throwing a little tantrum, and ultimately, at some point, they're going to say, "Okay, we're done with the tantrums. It's over. You know, we're walking away from you. You're not getting your way anymore." He's going to be so
well,
clueless. It's not even funny.
well, that's the thing. Donald Trump has probably done this all his life. He's reactionary, he's emotional, and malignant narcissists just say whatever the worst thing they can come up with, and they don't think about the future or the ramifications of it. And part of that is because he thinks he's such a brilliant orator or a brilliant negotiator that he can say anything to anybody and pull them back in the fold. And I have a feeling somebody like Leonard Leo or some of these wealthy guys are equally as narcissistic, and they don't like that shit. You don't fucking call them out and then they forgive you. It doesn't happen that way.
Yeah, he says what he wants, and he thinks that he's brilliant, and he can say anything to anybody and smooth talk them. But
Yeah.
it only works when he's got something to offer them. He doesn't realize that his political value is basically over at this point. He can't run for another term. Even about the only way he could run again for a third term would be if he were to resign before the 2 year mark. Then maybe it could be argued he could get a third term. But by then he would be so politically damaged that it wouldn't matter. Um, but he thinks he's got all this value. He doesn't see that his value is going away because that's not how he thinks. We know that. He thinks he's the brightest and the smartest and the most powerful. I can't wait to see when the realization hits him as
Yeah.
part of that downfall. It is going to it's going to be epic, and unfortunately, though, it could also be damaging to this country. We just have to be prepared for whatever might happen.
Yeah, Donald Trump has delusions of grandeur. There's no question about it. He thinks anytime he speaks, he thinks anytime he does anything, it's brilliant and everybody agrees with him. He says that. Oh, everybody's talking about it. Everybody agrees with me. Everybody likes this. He's not even self aware enough to know that there are a high percentage of people out there that think he sucks. All you have to do is look at the polling currently. He's polling at the lowest rate of any president, and it's going down. And things like Los Angeles, that's not going to help matters much. People are getting upset by it. I mean, I was telling Kristen, there's a um, there's a rep out in California, Ileana Garcia. She is a Republican. She is Latina, and she was also the founder of Latinas for Trump. Now we have what's going on, and she's crying and saying, "This is not what we voted for." And people are saying, yeah, bitch, it is what you voted for. You just didn't think he was going to hurt you. But you should have known better with Donald Trump. He doesn't care about you once he's gotten what he's wanted. and now people are crying about it, and he's not building he's not building supporters right now. He's hemorrhaging supporters at this point.
Oh yeah, he's not doing anything to gain himself any favors with anybody, but he doesn't see it like you said. He thinks everybody should think of him as the genius that he sees himself as. And when we all know he's not, it's uh kind of sad and pathetic in a way, but Donald Trump will not do anything to actually gain himself any followers anywhere, uh, because that would mean he'd have to actually care about other people, and that's
Yeah.
outside of what he's able to actually do. So I'm not surprised with this Republican representative. She's saying, "Well, it's not what we voted for. How did you not think this is what you voted for?" But as somebody else had pointed out, there's a disconnect between uh, Latina immigrants who have gotten here and the ones that are trying to come in. They think that
Yeah.
they've made it in. They're better. At least some of them do think they're better than the ones that are now trying to get in, or maybe the second and third generations believe that they are better and they're more accepted by people like Donald Trump when they really aren't. They look at them all the same, and they're blindsided when it actually hits them.
I think part of it is too, they believe that because they supported Donald Trump, he will cut them out of that mess. That they supported Donald Trump, so they'll just go after the people that are Democrats or liberals or stuff. And they're sadly mistaken, and they're like you say, blindsided. One of the things with Donald Trump, I think, when he does seem to have these delusions of grandeur, I think a lot of it has to do with the people around him. What we're noticing is there are situations where Donald Trump just seems unaware about situations. And I think it's due to all the yes people around him just wanting to keep him somewhat sane and saying, yeah, Donnie, you're the greatest. Yeah, Donnie, this is what's happening. Things are looking good, Donnie. I don't think he's being well informed by his people. I think they're telling him whatever he wants to hear just to keep the motherfucker quiet.
Well, yeah, and we've also heard that what was it? Christy Nome was talking about trying to hire Fox News producers to uh, do the
Yeah.
daily briefings, the security briefings for Donald Trump in a Fox News 2-minute clip style, because he responds better to visual than written things, and he doesn't read briefings, and they got to be written one page or less, written like how he speaks, or else he's got no interest, and it's got to have something in it for him about how he looks like a winner if he does this or that. And that's the thing with Donald Trump. He doesn't know what's going on because they're not telling him. He's woefully uninformed about everything because he doesn't want to be informed. He doesn't want to hear it if it's negative about him. He doesn't want to hear it if it doesn't involve him in some way, and if it doesn't make him look good. They don't tell him anymore because of how he reacts when they tell him. They're afraid of getting fired, getting personally attacked, or whatever the case may be. And again, Donald Trump doesn't realize how ignorant this all makes him appear.
Yeah. Well,
It's a symptom of
I compare it to like having a 5-year old. I just so happen to have a 5-year old grandchild. And you take them bowling, you know? And if you let them bowl and they start getting gutter balls, they start getting mad. So what do you do when you take them bowling and you don't want them to get gutter balls? They have those bumpers now where they can't get gutter balls. They cover the gutters and these things bounce back and forth and they get some pins and they're fucking happy. Same thing with Donald Trump. We don't want him to hear any bad shit. We don't want him to have any failures that he knows about. We'll just keep him with the bumpers up and everything will be fine. And that's not working to their benefit because Donald Trump ends up looking foolish every time he talks about something and he has no clue.
well, yeah, because when they're dealing with him in person, that's kind of what it is. They treat him with the bumpers up. Then he gets out in front of the media, and using your bowling analogy, the bumpers are now gone, and he's getting gutter balls. going, well, how am I getting a gutter ball? I always get pins. And
I'm
he's
a
completely
genius.
lost. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, Eric, I'm going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. We're about at that point. I want to thank you for coming by. I was anxious to talk to you because you're a reasonably minded guy. You're calm and you know details. And I'm not a detail guy, so I need you to educate me. And that's what happens every time you're on the show. You educate me. I know you educate a lot of folks out there in the listening audience as well. Why don't you tell folks how they can find you? Because if they haven't found you yet, they better fucking get on it.
Well, you can find me on TikTok or on YouTube, Analytical Iowan on either one. And I've got a link tree out on both. So you can find me. If you find one, you can find me on the other. Um, Going back, posting all my stuff up from TikTok over on YouTube. Like you said, I try to do a lot more of detail stuff. I try to look at things in a bigger picture kind of way. Uh, those are the two places. Still looking at trying to get things straight and getting my stuff out there on some other apps as well. But those are the two primary ones where you can find me.
Well, I tell you what, if there's any endorsement for watching what Eric is doing, I think I can safely say that everybody that ever comes on this show as a guest, from Jace to Old Soul to any of those people, they all watch Eric. They all watch Eric, including myself. And if you're not watching him, you should be because you'll learn a lot and you'll feel a lot better about what's going on. He and I are similar in our mindsets, but totally different in how we present what we're doing. We do totally different things. So if you watch me, you should also watch Analytical Iowan because I watch him. And it helps me a lot in kind of formulating the videos I do.
Yeah, I do. I try to keep more of a calm approach, and I try to look at, because it's very easy with some of what's going on to get wrapped up in the hype, the paranoia, and
Yeah,
being afraid of what could potentially happen. And I try to bring it back down to, well, it could be bad, but here's the limits of what could happen. And I try to, you know, level things out. Am I always 100% correct? No, but I try to keep it as calm as possible because I think sometimes you need that calm voice out there because too many people get wrapped up in it. They start getting scared and panicking. And then when we're panicking, we're not making the best decisions going forward. We're trying to just get out of the situation. Whereas if we take a step back, take a deep breath, maybe we can find a good path forward that will actually make things better in the long run.
absolutely. Those of you listening, I want to thank you for taking the time. I hope you have a great day, and we will talk to you again tomorrow.